All right, welcome to the Sassy Aviators podcast. I'm your host, Sarah the Pivoter, and I just felt inspired to come on and speak to you live today about reinventing life and self care at the workplace. Now, this is something that has been thrown around a lot recently, especially in the post COVID era. And it is crucially important that we have self care practices for ourselves at work and at home. The work part is a huge part of our life. And I don't like to use the word work life balance because when we say balance, we usually think about a set of scales, and this implies 50-50. Now, for some people and in some seasons of your life, you need a little bit more self care, a little bit more attention on that personal side of things, on the physical side of things. No one ever was on their deathbed saying that they wanted to work more, right? So, how do we build a holistic system that supports you in your life goals? So, we need to reinvent the workplace as individuals, making sure that we understand our own needs and boundaries, communicating those to others, and modeling for our teams, our children, our partners, how we can do things differently. So, for those of you that are watching me on LinkedIn or YouTube or Facebook, you'll see me looking over here every once in a while because I've got Instagram going live as well, just getting some different, facial angles and having a little bit of fun with everyone. But why is this so important? Well, when we do not have self care practices, we're not sustainable, right? We burn out, we churn through employees, we lose our motivation, we lose our drive to do things. Or we're applying the catch-all meditation as the antidote to overwhelm and burnout. When actually, overwhelm and burnout can be a sign that you're growing, you're evolving, you're stretching yourself, you're doing something new. And I did a little video on this the other day where I had heard from David at Raptitude about the two-step process to cracking an egg, right? An egg is a smooth shell, it's hard, it's tough, protects everything on the inside. But in order to cook the eggs, we have to crack it first, but not too much that we smash the egg, and not too weak, because then we get the little pieces and fragments that fall into our pan as we try to open it. Now, as an adult, we become more dexterous, we have a lot of experience, it becomes easier and easier. But we have to crack the shell first so that we can get to the next step of cooking eggs, which is get the egg in the pan and then decide on your cooking method. This is the same thing when we approach work and life. But what are we going to crack for this topic? Well, what we need to do is crack into our consciousness so that we are making intentional and conscious choices about how we show up in the workplace, how we show up as leaders, how we show up as parents, as friends, as partners, as a human being. And so today's topic is really inspired by a recent article that I read from Deepak Chopra. I love his work because he is really at the forefront of combining that consciousness expansion, that being able to integrate the different selves that we have. And depending on which platform you're watching this on, you're showing up as a different self. We all have different voices depending on who we're with, what we chose to wear that day, how we slept, what food we've eaten, who's around us, what's the environment that we are in. That then determines our behavior. And typically the self-care topic at work has not been one that's been given a lot of attention. And unfortunately, due to COVID, we now have a lot of companies gearing up and doing a lot of things, but it's a box stick. It's not actually making a difference because there's no follow-up. There is no follow through from the management team, from the mid-level managers, and it is not systemically changing the way that things are being approached. So when we start to look at our self-care practices, we want to understand that it is also about having the self-assurance that you know how to cope when things get tough, that you are resilient, that you've been through things in the past and you've come up through the other side. And it's been not always puppies and rainbows, but you've gotten through. So knowing that you have coping skills that are suitable, that you can get through, that are comfortable, that you know how to use, is more important than allowing external pressure to conform or to fulfill a goal. And this is how we start to change the narrative. We start to embrace that overwhelm and know that it is part of the growth process, right? That first time you cracked an egg, it probably was overwhelming if you can remember that. And maybe you did smash the egg on the floor. Maybe you did crack eggshells all over into the pan and it was a big project, right? The first time you do anything, this is what it feels like. So flipping the script and realizing this is just part of the process. And if you try to avoid the overwhelm and get rid of it completely, you're missing out on growth opportunities. You're missing out on what life is really about. And so instead of spiking up and going down and having this pendulum swing between burnout and overwhelm and elation, we find ourselves more in the middle, swinging between the two, but not such wild swings. The whole point of having coping skills is to be able to take care of yourself first, right? We put our own oxygen mask on before we help others. Those of you in aviation have heard this a million times. Those of you who have flown in airplanes, don't listen to the person telling you about this very important thing. You probably won't listen to me telling you that either, but it is still true. We cannot operate if we're depleted. If we are running out of oxygen, then we are kicking over stands, elbowing babies, trying to get to what we need, what we want the most. So setting up what I call your SAS, your semi-automatic support system, helps you to not get into that state. And you start to give yourself what you need from yourself, rather than relying on other people. Now that gold star is fantastic and it feels good for a hot second, but it is not sustainable. And if you're constantly doing things and reaching and striving for that gold star, you will never feel good enough. Your team will never feel confident enough in the decisions that they're making. And when you work in a high pressured environment that has dispatch, that has millions of dollars worth of equipment, ultra high net worth individuals, lives at stake, safety concerns, regulatory requirements, this is an important skill. To be able to emotionally co-regulate your emotions and do that for your team, model healthy behavior, is how you create sustainability and how you keep people. The Great Resignation has impacted many businesses and industries, but more so than most, aviation, because it's traditionally been an industry that's very logical and linear, no emotion, just get it done. And yet, we are human beings, not robots. And there are a lot of stresses out there. So how do we make it that we keep top talent? How do we ensure that the money we're investing into the people we're hiring is worthwhile, that is keeping people, if not within our organization, within the industry, right? So we don't have to constantly retrain. Technical skills can be taught, but attitude is everything. So if we build it correct from the ground up, we have that sustainability and that longevity. And it gets better for everyone. You as the manager no longer to take calls at 2 o'clock in the morning for some very basic decision making. You no longer have to manage he said, she said, BS. That happens. No matter where you work, it happens. I can guarantee it. You've either been on the he said or the she said, or the one managing the two, or the one in the middle. That's part of being human. So how do we build our coping skills? I want you to stop and ask yourself, how do you want to feel? This is really a problem that is not a problem, but something to evolve. And we need to build it from the inside out rather than externally in. So instead of needing the external validation, needing all these other things to fulfill and satisfy us, we have that from the inside, that stability, that foundation, so that when the wind comes and the big bad wolf is blowing down the door, it doesn't work because we know we have the tools to cope. So even though times are tough and we feel the pain, we don't suffer as much. And we know that the sun will come out again. The storm doesn't last forever. So as you're going through your days, I want you to start asking yourself, how do you want to feel? And how do you want this day to unfold? And who do you need to be in order for those things to happen? The criteria for coping well at work are as follows. Allowing yourself to feel relaxed at moments in the day. Maybe not all day, every day, but being relaxed. We always operate with more conscious response when we are not in fight or flight mode. So what are the tools at your disposal that really help you get back into a relaxed state? Have fun. Work is not just to increase profits and tell people what to do. No, all those are great things. And yes, business is business. We need to have fun doing it. If you look at schools, you look at apps, they're gamifying learning, they're gamifying progress. You go to a gym, Orange Theory, Hit 45, there's a scoreboard, a leaderboard. It's gamified so that we are more incentivized to keep going, right? This is why Candy Crush keeps you on there for hours and hours and hours. When we start to enjoy ourselves and we are having fun, there's less pressure because we are then creating camaraderie as well. And when you're fun, other people want to be around you, right? Like attracts like. If you're miserable, you're going to pull other people down with you. But if you are enjoying yourself, you are being able to make decisions from a place of confidence and relaxation, and you invite fun into the equation, people want to follow you. They want to know what you ate for breakfast, where you slept, what pajamas you're wearing, right? They want to know your daily routine. So as we start to go through our coping skills, we begin to appreciate the steps that got us to where we are. Think about where you are in your life right now. How did you get there? How did you become the CEO? How did you become a manager of your department? How did you set up your own business? What were those stepping stones that helped you to achieve the goal? Truth is, you probably didn't do it alone. It's very rare that anyone actually achieves things alone. Now, we might think we do, but there's a lot of factors that go in. We have mentors, we have coaches, we have guides, family members, the team. We learn from our team asking questions. So how did you get there? What were those steps? Can you map it out? Do you see a pattern? And if so, can you recreate it so that the next time you face a bit of a stumbling block, a sticky point, you can just whip that out and remind yourself, hey, you got this. You have the tools to be able to get through towards your goal, and you immerse yourself in this process. It becomes part of your DNA, and it's about intentionality. It's about who you are and who you're becoming. Not what you used to do, not what you did in the past, but who are you today? What decisions today do you need to make? And how does that help you towards your goal? What's the pro? What's the con? Every action has a cost. Watching me on this live means you're not spending time somewhere else. Going out to eat means you're spending more money. But what do you gain instead? So understanding where things serve you and where they limit you, and how that changes depending on the environment you're in and the decisions you need to make, will be helpful so that you can make the right decisions that are in alignment for what you need, for what your business needs, for what your team needs. This also then helps to bring you into a state of focus, to be certain in your actions. When you are certain and you are very focused, things are in flow, right? It's like running water through a river. That water that's flowing is healthy, it's clear. But the water that's on the side, stagnant, not moving, it's got muck, slime. Doesn't feel good, doesn't look good, does not taste good. No, don't even want to try drinking it, right? No amount of putting that through the filter is going to make me want to drink that water. And as we start to understand the coping mechanisms that we already have, we already employ, and the ones that we'd like to develop, we can bring a conscious and intentional process to change, to ushering in what we need. All we have to do is ask ourselves the simple questions, but very powerful questions. So while it is simple, it is very difficult to do. Usually the more simple a task, the more difficult it is to implement. Why? Because we are scared of taking responsibility. There's no ambiguity for us to then find the loophole later to justify our thought process or our actions. So when we start to ask on this list that I've mentioned, relaxed, having fun, enjoying yourself, feeling no pressure, appreciating the steps that got us to where we are, that will help us reach other goals, immersing ourselves in this process, and being focused and centered at the same time. You can ask yourself, is this how I feel? And the answer is yes. Then you're on the right path. You are able to cope well at work and at home, because the way you do one thing is the way you do all things. It transfers over. But if you do not feel this way, for example, if you say, having fun, is this how I feel? And the answer is no. And if you have no to multiple things, you're not thriving. You're probably only surviving, spinning the wheels, trying to get through the day, living for the weekend. And that's not a way to live life. When we do that, we're letting our work be in charge, and we are sacrificing who we are as individuals for what we can accomplish. When we get to that achiever's mindset, we tie the value, our self-worth, to the amount of money that we make, to the title on our business card, to who we know. And that has absolutely nothing to do with it. The two should come together, thriving and accomplishing goals. They do not need to be mutually exclusive. It is not an or conversation. It is an and conversation, like many things. Yet we have been taught that it can only be one, this or that. But who says you can't be serious and silly? Who says you can't be powerful and playful? Actually, very often, what might be considered an opposing viewpoint is supportive and complementary, with context, nuance, and discernment, as one of my coaches would like to say. Because not all the time do we need to be powerful, nor all the time is being playful the appropriate approach. Learning this for yourself is also part of building your coping skill set. When we look at living with intentionality and being conscious, we start to also understand what other forms of currency feel good for us. And that can include time, health, friendship, community. It does not always have to be about money. Now, of course, money achieves many things and it allows us to do certain things. But if at the sacrifice of your time, you are earning the money, when can you spend it and how will you spend it? Maybe at the sacrifice of your health. So by the time you're able to enjoy, you're too busy spending it on medical bills. And it defeats the purpose. Hey, everyone who's joining live. Nice to see you. So as soon as we see this, we start to understand that when we have success, we are immersed in deadlines. There's management issues. There's a lot of stress in that striving, in that quest. But as soon as we blame the woes on the external factors, they win, truly. The external factors only change when you change, when you change, when I change, and when we accept that it's part of the process. And guess what's going to happen? As you up level and you solve the problems at this level, you're going to get bigger and greater problems because you can now handle them. You have stretched enough that your capacity is increased. More will fit in. Things that were previously outside your realm of comprehension are now deep inside, and something that you have a foundation for which to resolve. So our mindset is crucial. If we are constantly chasing deadlines and reacting to other people, get an email, react, respond, and beat the clock, we cannot reasonably cope. Now in aviation, this is a skill set that serves you, right? Especially if you're in dispatch. AOG situations, aircraft on ground, mechanical issue. Pilot has been injured, can't show up, we don't have a relief crew. There's been a closure at an airport, there's a weather system. All of these things put us into this fight or flight mode all the time. And we're solution oriented. And then we don't know how to turn off. We take it home. And it transfers over and trickles over into other areas of our life. Then there's no time for the person, and that security of understanding our mind-body connection, that ability to make decisions that are good for us, turning off, resting and relaxing, so we come back sharp for the next time, start to trickle away. We sacrifice who we are for what we can accomplish over and over again when we don't allow ourselves to take the time to put oxygen mask on and build our coping skills. The more self-aware you are, the more you can achieve. And it might sound foreign to some of you. You might be thinking, who's in that woo-woo? When in fact, you ask anyone out there in the top 1%, what are some of their tips for successful living? And they will point you back to the mindset, their approach. They are approaching the problem that they're facing as if they already have a solution, even if they don't have it yet. And yet is the key word here. The more centered you are, the deeper your source for inspiration and connectivity. The more secure you are in the decisions that you make, knowing that even if the decision doesn't work out for you this time, you can make another decision and you can realign yourself. You can show the teams that you lead how the wide vision needs a very narrow focus. And this is why we have specialties in medicine, in aviation, and technology, everywhere, right? All of the traits of success are inner traits. You will not get the top 1% telling you, oh yeah, it was because I took this one course or because I drank Gatorade every day, whatever external thing. It's because they went inside and they built their awareness. They developed their coping skills. They developed their resilience. They cultivated it so that they could handle challenges and tough situations again and again and again, knowing that reality changes in every moment. It does not stay the same. So if we cling to the success and we avert the pain, that's when we suffer. When we start to accept things for what they are and become more aware, we can make better decisions. We can connect with the right people. We draw in clients that are matches for what we're offering. We start to have a harmony that makes sense. Instead of just drummers in the band, we invite a guitar player, a bass, maybe a violinist sometimes, and really rock out, trombone, saxophone. We can play with the elements to create something that sounds and feels good when we need it. But we have to develop the coping skills in order to be able to get through this tough point and the awareness to know which skill we need to employ. What tool do we need to use? So as we are in this state of awareness, we start to understand all of our different behaviors from different perspectives. We start to build out our capabilities and we limit distractions. We stop seeking support of other people, knowing that we can support ourselves. We know how to make decisions. And all of us are between different poles. As we build self-awareness, we stop swinging so wildly between the different poles, and we have a milder swing, which means, again, we're more balanced and centered. And then the cycle can repeat. At a certain point, we all realize that this awareness is not static, it's dynamic, it's ever-changing. And the real question begins to be, who is making those changes? Who's in charge? You or the people around you, the external environment? So sacrificing yourself to other people, work, and outside demands is one of the greatest mistakes that we all make. We've all been there. And guess what? We're all going to be there again because that's part of being human. But understand that inner work is some of the most important work that you can do. It's your most precious possession. If you're an entrepreneur, your business is a direct reflection of who you are on the inside. If you're chaotic on the inside, you're going to create chaos in your environment. If you're calm and centered, your reality around you will be calm and centered. So how can you fulfill your potential from the inside first? And then apply it to your external environment. Give yourself that oxygen. Give yourself permission. This is something that's easier said than done. Something I still work on every single day. But I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt, this type of work is what has enabled me to grow in my career and over 17 years in aviation, working in the business jet sector, multicultural environments, overseas. This is how I communicated effectively. This is how I built teams, how I trained them to be able to make decisions for themselves, empowered them so they felt they had that ability. And this is how I built my business. And every time I come to a sticky point, it's time to go back and do some inner work. If any of this has resonated with you, I'd love to have a conversation where we can really nail down what's going on for you. You click the link up in my bio on LinkedIn or send me a message. We can get on a call and see what makes sense. 20 minutes of your time, we'll nail out what is the biggest thing that you're facing right now and what's just the very next step. We don't need to solve all of it. We just need to get that one step so that you can move forward, get unstuck, and start pivoting. I'll see you guys very soon.